It's always monks this, monks that. Did the Buddha address any practices to lay people like us?
What the Buddha taught the monks and what he taught lay people are not the same.
So tell me, I'm excited to know now.
And then he said, when should you do these recollections? When you're walking, when you're standing, when you're sitting, when you're reclining,
That's right.
when you're living surrounded by children in your house. This is very potent teaching also for us because we meet with suffering all the time. Why? Because of our attachments to our ideas, beliefs, expectations of how people should behave and how we should behave and perform.
Right.
And when these are not met, what happens?
Suffer.
Yeah.
Consciousness causes suffering. So does that mean that if I just pong and then go unconscious, then there'll be no suffering?
That doesn't uproot the great hate and delusion. That's only a temporary cessation of consciousness. He has heard that the Buddha, he will be going traveling. The people among the Sakyang clan, they will miss him.
That's right. They can't even call him a cell phone.
So Mahānāma, no phone.
That's right. Unfortunate.
No WhatsApp, no video conferencing, no YouTube.
Right. That's right. It's quite unfortunate.
The highly respected Malaysian Buddhist master, Bhante Aggacitta, is practically a walking library of suttas. Bhante's spiritual path started young. He was a playful, mischievous boy born in 1954 in Penang. At the tender age of 25, he was ordained as a bhikkhu under the renowned Burmese master Mahasi Sayadaw. Upon returning to Malaysia, Bhante spent 4 years in solitary meditation in Sarawak before coming back to West Malaysia. To Bhante Aggacitta, the Dharma is a lifetime of personal investigation with regards to suffering. He calls it Dharma R&D. Spiritual practice is like doing research in a lab minus lab mice, or rather, you are the lab mouse. Bhante is always looking for the most practical ways to help both monastics and lay people towards liberation. His work led to the founding of Sāsanārakkha Buddhist Sanctuary, the first Theravada monk training center in Malaysia. On one hand, Bhante is a strict and rigorous teacher. His students who bravely sign up for his Sutta studies workshops are required to deeply investigate the suttas, gather for heated discussions, and be prepared to be challenged by the teacher, one with an encyclopedic knowledge of the suttas. On the other hand, Bhante is fun. His meditation halls are always filled with laughter and fun interactions. In addition to teaching suttas and meditation, Bhante conducts mindful hiking retreats, he designs Dharma rhymes to help people remember practice instructions, and he translates popular Pali chants into English and Hokkien, while preserving the Pali meter.
Friends, welcome to another episode of Meng Friends, and today we have Bhante Aggacitta with us. Bhante, thank you so much for coming on our show.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So such an honor to have you. So Bhante, I have a question. When we look at the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha is always addressing monks. It's always monks this, monks that. So you may notice I'm a layperson. And my question to you, Bhante, is that did the Buddha address any discourses or practices to lay people like us?
That's a good question. Because a lot of people now, they learn Buddhist meditation from monks. And the monks will teach them what works for them. But what the Buddha taught the monks and what he taught lay people are not the same.
Oh.
In the suttas, we have hundreds and hundreds of discourses addressed to monks.
Right.
And different ways of practicing meditation from different angles, depending very much on the monk's temperament, inclination, and spiritual maturity. Nowadays, it's very easy to search the Tipitaka because everything is digitalized. So you just key in certain words, keywords, and it will show you where it occurs in the suttas. In my recent workshop, the Gradual Training Sutta Study with Meditation workshop, this is exactly what I dealt with. To clear misconceptions of how lay Buddhists should practice or can practice.
Oh, very cool. So tell me, I'm excited to know now.
Great. people had to crack their brains to try to answer this discussion topic. But now you get it for free.
Wow, heng ah. I don't have to crack my brain. Yeah.
So when I made a research into the suttas, the types of meditations or practices that were given directly by the Buddha or indirectly through his disciples for lay people, it's just a handful. Literally a handful. Okay, the first one you could say is a question from his cousin Mahānāma.
Yes.
And this is found in the Aṅguttara Nikāya,
Yes.
Book of 6.
Yes.
But this Mahānāma approached the Buddha and asked the Buddha, Bhante, for someone who has already attained the fruit.
That's right. Sotapatti, right? Stream entry. Right?
Kind of, he didn't really say so,
I
but
didn't
he
say,
just said, someone who has already attained the fruit, who has already understood the teaching, how should he dwell in life?
That's right.
For many practitioners nowadays, you would probably think that the Buddha would say, continue to practice the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, or contemplate on the dependent origination, or try to experience the Four Noble Truths, and so forth. But no, that was not what the Buddha said.
Right, right.
The Buddha gave him very simple meditations to do.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah.
The 6 recollections.
Yeah.
Recollecting the virtues of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, your own Sīla, your own morality, and your generosity, and the Devas.
That's right. Yeah.
And recollecting the Devas doesn't mean visualizing Kuan Yin, or any deity and invoking their help.
Correct. Yeah.
Actually, when it says recollecting the virtues of the Deva, but actually it's actually introspective or retrospective recollection of the virtues that you also possess.
Right.
Because in order for the Devas to be reborn in their respective realms now, they need to have certain qualities.
Right, certain virtues.
Yeah, they need to have certain qualities.
Yes.
So you reflect these qualities and then bring it to yourself.
Right. It's like
I too have these qualities.
Yes, that's right.
Actually, you are reflecting on your own qualities rather than qualities of the Devas.
So in this case, the Devas, the gods are treated as like inspiring friends. Like the friends who inspire you, rather than like objects of prayer. Yes.
And the Buddha says that for one who has already entered the stream of the Dhamma, this is how he should practice.
Right. So the Buddha explicitly said enter the stream down here.
So when I was doing the workshop, some of the participants said, in that case, it's not relevant to us.
That's right.
If we are not stream enterers, well, how do we recollect all this?
Yes. Okay.
That was a very good question.
That's right. And what was the answer?
Now we go on to the next Mahānāmasutta.
Okay.
Dutiyamahānāmasutta. This time also Mahānāma asked him, but it was not a personalized one. Because in the first question, he was asking him about someone who has attained the fruit.
Correct.
But here, he has heard that the Buddha, after the Vasa, he will be going traveling. And when he travels, the people around in that area where he was staying, in Sakyan, among the Sakyan clan, they will miss him.
Yes.
They will not be able to see him, come and pay respect and listen to the Dhamma.
That's right. They can't even call him on his cell phone.
So Mahānāma, no phone.
That's right. Unfortunate.
No WhatsApp. No video conferencing, no YouTube.
Right. That's right. Quite unfortunate.
So Mahānāma asked the Buddha, we hear that you're going off soon.
Yes.
So how should we, who have different lifestyles, how should we continue to practice?
Right.
How should we live?
Yeah.
And the first thing the Buddha said was, establish yourself in the 5 spiritual faculties. You know what they are?
Yes.
What are they?
By the way, this is a test. He never asked me before we stayed. So mindfulness, wisdom, faith, oh my God, effort. Oh my God. Yes, virtue. I got most of it right.
Let me give you in order.
Okay.
Faith, and then you have virya, which is effort.
Effort, yes.
And then you have mindfulness.
Yes.
And then you have samadhi.
Oh, samadhi.
And finally, panya.
Panya. Okay, so I got 4 out of 5.
Okay, so in this he asked them to first establish yourself in these 5 spiritual faculties, because with this you will succeed. And after that, he said, after you have established yourself in the 5 spiritual faculties, then you go on to do the same 6 recollections.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what can we learn from that?
And then he said, when should you do these recollections? When you're walking, when you're standing, when you're sitting, when you're reclining,
That's right.
when you're living surrounded by children in the house. So Buddha covered everything. You got no excuse for not being able to meditate.
Oh, fascinating. So what can we learn from this? That now he added the 5 faculties to the contemplations.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody asked me about how to recollect your own virtues. I say, you must have some degree of ethical...
have some virtue to recollect in the first place.
Yeah, there's some degree of moral standards, in order to recollect it. Because how are you going to do it?
Yes. Right.
So that's why the Buddha started off by saying, establish yourself in the 5 spiritual faculties.
Oh, so you have some virtues.
Yeah,
That's
then
the
you
reason.
have some good foundation for you to recollect on.
Oh, I see.
All right, if you have faith in the Buddha, then you have effort,
Yes,
putting
yes.
effort, you got mindfulness, you
Yes.
got samadhi, you got panya.
Yes.
Then automatically you will appreciate the Buddha, right?
Yes,
the Buddha,
yes.
the Dharma, and the Sangha, because you also see some aspect of the Dharma.
Oh, fascinating. So the 5 faculties become the grounds for a more complete contemplation of the 6 contemplations.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
He didn't say that to Mahānāma in the first sutta, because he's already a Sri Lecturer.
Oh, that's right, because he already had the 5 faculties.
He already had the 5 faculties.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that. Yes, and of course the relationship is circular, right? Because if you do the 6 contemplation, it also strengthens the 5 faculties. So it's not one way.
Right. He goes on to say that when you do, for both of these suttas, he says that when you do these 6 recollections, your mind will not be obsessed by lust, hate, or delusion.
Ooh.
And then mind becomes straight, very straight. You have inspiration with regard to the Dhamma, inspiration with regard to the meaning. Then this will lead to joy, rapture, tranquility, and samadhi.
Wow. That's so awesome.
Yeah, so you can actually gain samadhi by doing these recollections.
Wow.
So that's one of the things that the Buddha taught. These are only 2 suttas.
Right.
Directly for lay people.
Right.
And then another sutta was his. There was one headman by the name of Bhadraka. He approached the Buddha and asked the Buddha to tell him cause of suffering and its cessation. This is interesting because he was actually talking about mind-rooted suffering. I think from the context of the sutta, the Buddha was thinking, how should I explain to him so that he can understand? And he asked him a very simple question. If there was somebody in town, he got arrested by the authorities and he's tortured, put to death, how would you feel? Well, if I don't know him, I don't feel anything. But if somebody that I knew, my relative, my friend, or whoever, then someone whom I'm attached to, then of course I feel very concerned. Right,
correct.
And then the Buddha said, yeah, you got it right there. What is the cause of suffering? The cause of suffering is desire, attachment. So whether it's a past, present, or future, all sufferings are caused by desire. So that is also a very simple contemplation. And all of us meet with suffering all the time.
Here did the Buddha say tanha or did he say desire in general?
He said desire.
Oh, generally desire.
General desire.
Fascinating. Okay.
Right, and he actually addressed this to somebody who asked him a question about suffering and the cause of suffering. So this is the way he answered the question. It shows that he's talking about mind-rooted suffering.
Right. Yes, correct.
And he didn't go on to explain about the total cessation of suffering and the Noble Eightfold Path. Because you don't really need to follow the Noble Eightfold Path in order to reduce your sufferings, unless you want to get out of samsara. Right? So this is very potent teaching also for us, because we meet with suffering all the time. Why? Because of our attachments to our ideas, beliefs, expectations of how people should behave and how we should behave and perform.
Right.
And when these are not met, what happens?
Suffer.
Yeah.
I see. So doing our best but letting go. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, every time you see the link between suffering and desire, you become wiser. Then when a desire arises, you are more cautious.
Right.
Shall I follow this one or not? So eventually you will be able to cut down as many unnecessary desires as possible.
Oh, that is powerful, Bhante, because what you're saying is that just even the awareness that this desire is causing this suffering, just awareness it begins a process.
Correct.
Oh, awesome.
Awareness to see the link between suffering and the cause.
Right, and this is even before any practice. It's just being aware, and that already enough to trigger it.
The trigger.
Wow, amazing.
In fact, that was the main meditation for me as a layperson.
Oh, really?
Before anyone taught me any meditation.
Oh, tell me, how did that process? What was it like?
I was in my third year in USM.
Okay.
I was 23. University Science Malaysia.
University Science
in
Malaysia.
Penang.
Okay.
So at that time, I read somebody introduced me to a book called The Way of Zen. In that book, there was something about the Four Noble Truths, talking about suffering and the cause of suffering being desire.
Yes.
So I was a perfectionist at that time, and I still have that perfectionist streak.
That's right.
And so I suffered a lot because in uni, we had to do group projects. We try our level best, but our group members, some of them are not living up to our expectations of how they should perform.
I know exactly what it feels like.
Our grades down, and I really suffered a lot.
Yes.
So I began to see this link, suffering and desire, because I was having unrealistic expectations of how people should perform. Right?
Yes.
I'm trying to impose my standard on others.
Right.
Different people have got different standards.
Right.
So eventually I spread that out, not only to this sort of suffering. Whenever I felt angry, upset, disappointed, impatient, I would ask myself, why? And all the time,
it's desire.
Attachment.
Yeah.
Wanting things to be done quickly. Attachment to ideas, beliefs, expectations. So that was what led me to Monkhood. Just by watching this, I reduced all desires until even chasing that degree is a desire. And you cause so much suffering because of that.
So did you graduate?
I did. I dropped out after the third year. I couldn't study anymore. I lost all interest in worldly pursuits.
Amazing.
So I always stress that that's a very potent teaching. Even though you don't go meditate, you don't go for any meditation retreats. I never went for any meditation retreats. I was never a member of any Buddhist society. It was just a personal search, an introspective, retrospective awareness, and looking at this link between suffering and the cause.
Amazing. So that story, Bhante's story, illustrates the power of just the awareness alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Of looking at this link, understanding this link between suffering and its cause. In fact, there's one particular sutta called the Dvayatānupassanāsutta, the repeated observation of dhyats or pairs. It's found pairs, one pair.
Oh, pairs.
One pair. And then this is found in the Sutta Nipata, where the Buddha addressed monks, not lay people. And told them that if you just contemplate or just repeatedly observe this suffering and its cause, then this can lead to arahantship. Or if not arahantship, then anagami.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And then he gave about 12 combinations, 12 pairs. We often associate the cause of suffering as desire, but there's an underlying cause. Why do you desire? Because you are ignorant that nothing is worth desiring.
Oh, so is this where the self-dependent origination?
Yeah, so actually there's another cause, which is ignorance. Ignorance is the cause of suffering. So there's another option. And it could also be consciousness is the cause of suffering. Because you're conscious, and then you desire things. Because of feeling, because of contact, because of certain things. This all will lead to suffering.
Right.
So just by looking at one pair, not necessarily the 12 links of the dependent origination.
Just one pair. Okay.
Just one pair.
Fascinating.
So if you're a lazy person, just do this.
Oh, wow.
Look at suffering and its cause.
I am lazy, so this is great. So one thing, if you don't mind a minor tangent. So what you just said, consciousness causes suffering. So does that mean that if I just pong and then go unconscious, then there'll be no suffering?
No, because you're conscious, then all these sense stimuli come into you. Right?
Yeah.
And because of that, you see things you like, you see things you don't like, the things that you like, you desire, the things you don't like, you try to push away, and all this will bring you suffering.
Yeah, but so is the solution just a hammering my head into unconsciousness?
So consciousness, if you don't have consciousness, there's no suffering.
Yeah.
It's because we are conscious that we have suffering.
Yeah. So what's the solution to that?
Practice until you end consciousness.
Yeah, but isn't that the same as knocking my head with a hammer?
No, that's not the same, because you're knocking your head until you go unconscious. That doesn't uproot the great hidden delusion. That's only a temporary cessation of consciousness.
Oh, yeah, that's a point that is hard for most people to understand. Yeah,
Right.
Consciousness. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, there are altogether 12 pairs. Where everything is looked at as suffering and its cause.
Right.
So there are 12 causes of suffering. They are independent causes.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
By themselves.
Yeah.
So it depends on each individual, because you might find that looking at this link between ignorance and suffering, it suits you. Somebody might find that looking at clinging and as a cause of suffering suits me. So
yes.
Actually, the Buddha started off by saying the Four Noble Truths. And then the monk said, Buddha, is there another option?
Oh, so because he's too lazy.
And then after he gave the second option, then somebody else, is there another option? So they keep on asking, until altogether there were 18 pairs. But only 12 were connected to suffering and its cause. And there are other pairs also. So these monks, they had a lot of options. If one doesn't work for you, try another one.
Amazing.
Another one doesn't work for you, try another one.
Amazing.
So in the end, at the end of the discourse, 60 monks became arahants.
60. Wow. It's pretty cool. Wow.
But they were monks now. Not lay people. Okay. But okay, coming back to the other meditations that the Buddha taught.
Yes.
So we have already got the 6 Ānāsatis,
correct.
6 reflections.
Yes.
And then we have suffering and its cause.
Yes.
Another thing is that the Buddha actually encouraged his monks to establish people who are close to them, people who they think will listen to them, to establish them in the 4 establishments of mindfulness. Your friends, your colleagues, your kinsmen, your relatives, those who will listen to you. So this is a very important clause, those who will listen to you.
Okay.
Now, some people, especially seniors, they come into contact with Buddhism late in their life.
That's right.
And they find it very beneficial, very rewarding,
and
they want to try to get their children to embrace Buddhism. But if they are not ready for it, then it could be counterproductive. They can develop a phobia for Buddhism. Next time they won't go anywhere near Buddhism. Because they were forced to do something which they were not ready to do.
Right. That's one of the key like principles of parenting. So don't force them.
Don't force them.
Yes. And so this applies not just to your kids, but like in general. Like only like talk to those who are willing to listen.
Yeah. Even though the Buddha encouraged the monks to teach or lay people the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, there's not one single sutta where he personally taught any layperson. It's also very strange.
That is true. Is it possible that they were in the audience with other monks? That's why he addresses as bhikkhus, and then they address the lay people who are in the back audience?
In the Buddha's time, lay people didn't have the time. Life was hard at that time. Everything was labor intensive.
Yes, but it could be the rich ones, right? The Chitta and Hataka. They could be like they have free time. They could be at the audience, right? Is it possible?
These people, as far as I know, all those lay people who got enlightened during the Buddha's time, there was no retreat center.
That's right.
They didn't do any retreat.
That's right.
They just listened to the Dharma talk, the gradual teaching, or the progressive talk, starting with dana and ending with the 4 Noble Truths. And then they got the Dhamma eye. They became a stream enterer. While listening to the Dhamma talk, just one single talk.
Amazing. Can you do that to me, please? Maybe after this talk, I've done my eye.
So these were exceptional people.
Right.
That's why they could get enlightened.
Mm.
And after they got enlightened, then probably they did their practice by themselves.
Mm.
So there are a couple of one or two suttas where a layperson said that he was practicing the Satipaṭṭhāna.
That's right. Yeah.
But who taught him?
Yeah, didn't say.
We don't know.
That's right.
Was it the monks or heard
Yeah.
it from the Buddha while he was addressing the bhikkhus? We don't know.
That's right.
So the strange thing is that even though the Buddha encouraged the monks to teach the four establishments of mindfulness to lay people, he himself never gave a single discourse to
Yes.
lay people directly.
That's right. Yeah. Or exclusively that we know of.
Yeah, exclusively.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Then there's another interesting meditation,
Mm-hmm.
which again the Buddha did not teach lay people directly.
Mm.
He taught it to monks.
Mm.
It's very interesting because he was addressing the monks. He was telling the monks that they are 9-factored uposatha. You know, when you observe uposatha, there are how many precepts?
8?
You're not even sure.
I'm not very sure.
You observe the
I thought it's
uposatha by observing
Yeah.
the 8 precepts.
That's right. Oh, I got it right. Okay. I
So
wasn't sure.
then the Buddha added one extra one.
Okay.
He said if you observe the uposatha with 9 factors, then this will be of great fruit.
Okay. And what's the
But
ninth?
he was telling the monks.
Yeah.
He was not addressing the lay people directly.
Yeah.
So, what is the 9th one?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the ninth? Yeah.
What do you think?
I think after me to guess, I'm just guessing. I would think it is observing the contemplations. Is that
Because
right?
that's what you've heard so far.
That's right. Also, yeah. Am I
Very
close?
surprisingly, he said it was radiating loving kindness to all beings.
Oh, I love that. No pun intended. I love the loving kindness.
Loving kindness to all beings.
Yeah.
Only in that one sutta.
Yeah.
But there's another sutta
Yeah.
in the Itivattaka.
Yeah.
On another occasion, the
Mhm.
Buddha addressed the monks. The Buddha said that of all meritorious deeds that can lead to rebirth, none can surpass metta, loving kindness radiated to all beings.
Wow. Of all meritorious deeds,
Yes.
this is it.
This is the highest form of merits that can lead to rebirth.
Wow. I mean, a good rebirth, but not necessarily stream entry.
No. This is talking about samsara.
Oh,
about
still
rebirth.
samsara. Okay.
So, when you want to compare
Yeah.
loving kindness,
Yes,
which is the highest among all these merits that can lead to rebirth,
that's right. Yeah.
you compare it with vipassana,
Yeah.
which is higher.
Vipassana.
Why?
Because it goes beyond samsara.
Exactly.
Ah.
So that's why it's not included in there, because it doesn't lead to rebirth.
Oh.
When you do vipassana, it leads you out of birth,
I see.
out of death.
That makes perfect sense. But it's still a good practice to do. Loving kindness.
Of course.
Yes.
So that is one sutta.
Yeah.
There's also another sutta.
Mhm.
It's about food.
Okay.
Then again, the Buddha was addressing the monks. And it's very strange. He says, imagine that someone is going to do a dana of 100 pots of food to offer in the morning. And then another 100 pots
Mhm.
in the afternoon. Another 100 pots in the evening. None of this can be compared to metta. Because if you can practice metta, loving kindness to all beings, just for
Yes.
as long as it takes to
snap a finger.
pull the
Of the
udder of a cow.
That's
That's
right.
only psst, you know?
That's right.
This will surpass all this
Yeah.
dana that you do.
Yeah.
How much time do you have to spend to prepare 100 pots of food to offer in the morning?
That's right. Yeah.
And then afternoon
Yeah.
and evening,
Yeah.
you spend days of preparation,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And the whole day preparing all these things.
Yeah.
But you just have to,
One moment of
one
loving kindness.
moment of real metta to all beings, and that will surpass all of this.
Oh, save a lot of money.
So that's why then the Buddha ended, therefore monks,
Yeah.
you should establish yourself in loving kindness for all beings and develop it again and again
Yeah.
until you are skillful in it. But why should he talk about food to monks when monks don't do dana?
That's right. Yeah. Why?
Is it?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So that the monks could teach it to the lay people.
Then they won't get any dana or they go on monks'
Oh, that's right, huh?
You know, when I shared this with in my Sutta study with meditation workshop, somebody asked me. He said when it is said in the earlier sutta that of all the merits that can lead to rebirth, none can surpass metta to all beings. Then this lady asked me, why is this? Now only I know about it. I've been a Buddhist for so long. How come the scholars and the monks never teach us this? Why?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Then they do metta, don't need to do dana, how?
Oh.
No.
That's very funny. That's very funny.
Okay. Anyway, so why would he talk about dana and compare dana to metta to monks?
Yeah. Why?
Because monks don't do dana, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I have a speculation.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading in the Vinaya and the Suttas, mostly in the Vinaya. Some people become monks. Initially, they're very fired up, very inspired to put an end to suffering. But after they become a monk, they found that they're not doing very well. They can't meditate very well, they can't keep the precepts very well, they can't go beyond sensuality, they're always thinking of going back to the world. And so the common thought at that time was, what's the point of staying this as a monk? I might as well disrobe, make a lot of merits, then do dana, do this sort of things. So maybe the Buddha was addressing some of the monks there who were thinking of this, disrobing and doing dana, instead of practicing.
Right.
To dissuade them.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So probably it was that.
I see.
So basically, these are all the things that were taught directly or indirectly
to lay people. I see.
Nothing about the jhanas.
Okay.
Nothing about Ānāpānasati.
Oh,
Four Satipaṭṭhānas,
yes, that's right.
But then,
Yeah.
When you practice when you practice Ānāpānasati, the four tetrads of Ānāpānasati, then the Buddha says if you do it properly, then you also practice the four Satipaṭṭhānas.
Correct.
Right? And then you also develop the 7 factors of enlightenment.
Correct.
But it doesn't mean it's the other way around.
Really?
It doesn't mean that if you practice Satipaṭṭhāna, you must practice Ānāpāna.
Okay. But it is included in the first, in the Kaya Anusati, right?
No.
It's not
that's why I asked you whether you have watched my video on the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas according to the Samyutta Nikāya and Ānāpānasati Sutta.
Oh, Samyutta Nikāya. I see.
Because in Ānāpānasati Sutta, it says that you practice the 4 tetrads properly, you will be practicing all the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, right?
Correct.
But in the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna in the Digha Nikāya and the Majjhima Nikāya,
Yep.
Ānāpāna is found in Kāya-nupassana.
Precisely, yes.
But why is it not found in Vedana-nupassana? Why is it not found in Citta-nupassana?
That's right,
Why is it not found in Dhamma-nupassana?
Yeah, why?
That's right.
Yeah, why?
There are all these loopholes there that made me suspect that was not the real teaching of
So
the Buddha.
it was like compiled later.
Yes, it was the compilation, copy and paste from different
places.
Compiling into one comprehensive teaching.
That makes a lot of sense too. Yeah.
So when I say that, when I talk about Satipaṭṭhāna according to the Satipaṭṭhāna Saṅyutta, you see that there are many suttas in the Saṅyutta, in the Satipaṭṭhāna Saṅyutta. None of them go into details.
Oh.
None of them go into details. They just say repeatedly observing the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, and dhammas in dhammas. Full stop. They don't elaborate on what actually to observe.
Oh, yeah, right. Now that you mention it, yes.
So actually, if you practice it in this way, literally, it's very easy. You just watch the body as the body.
That's right.
Feeling is feeling. Mental states are mental states.
Yeah, you're right.
Dhammas here does not mean the 5 aggregates, the 5 hindrances. No, Dhammas here looking at the nature of these things. They arise and pass away. They are impermanent.
Oh yes, and the conditionality and what leads to suffering.
Yeah, and this Dhamma can be found in the body, in the Vedana, and also in the mental states. They are permanent. They are changing all the time.
Wow, that's
fascinating. So that's why it is something that lay people could meditate.
Yes.
Yeah, without much difficulty, because it's just observing.
Right. Right. So it's, in a sense, it is the simplified version of Satipaṭṭhāna. It's in a sense simplified, as in we don't have to go into the details of Majjhima Nikāya, like these are the 6 ways to practice Dharma.
You think lay people will be able to do that?
That's right, yeah, that's right. I agree with you.
And then all the 9 cemetery contemplations, Asubha, the new parts of the body, these were never taught to lay people.
Fascinating.
Who on earth is that?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
So, Bhante, if I let's try to remember what you taught today. For a layperson, first practice is the 5 faculties, right? And then from the 5 faculties, starting with 5 faculties, going into the 6 contemplations.
Okay.
Right. That's the first thing. Next thing I remember you saying is awareness of the causes of suffering.
Yeah.
Specifically, first and foremost, awareness of desire, how desire causes suffering.
Yes.
And then going beyond that into 12 pairs of what causes suffering, and whichever pair work best for you. For example, attachment could be the one that works best for you. Right. Ignorance could be the one that works best. So any one of those pairs will work. Also practice metta, loving kindness. Right. All that generosity, even just one moment of like perfect metta to all living beings, is better than all that material generosity. Right. And then the last thing, another thing I heard from you, could be the last thing, is practice Satipaṭṭhāna, like the 4 establishment of mindfulness, specifically mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, and dharmas, which is conditionality, like how things work. So don't have to go into the details. These are the 5 ways to practice this. Just generally aware of the body and feelings and so on. And this is the package for lay people, enough to at least trigger the path, but also, if practiced well, enough to go all the way to enlightenment.
I missed out one more.
Oh, one more. Okay.
This one is even more potent.
Oh, even more potent. Okay. Yes.
This one is the 5 the 5 themes that you frequently reflect that you are subject to old age, to sickness, to death. You will eventually be separated from what you cherish and love.
Yes.
And finally, you are the owner of your own karma. So these 5 themes, if you constantly reflect on it, and this was not addressed to just monks or to lay people. This was addressed to all human beings, whether you are female or male, whether you are renounced or a layperson, because this is applicable. This is universal.
Awesome.
So if you just contemplate on this frequently, repeatedly contemplate on this, then it will help you to cut down on your intoxication with regard to youth, with regard to health, with regard to long life, and also with regard to things that you cherish. And finally, also you will diminish and even eventually eradicate all the bad karma. And then this is only when you're talking about yourself. I'm subject to this, I'm subject to that. But if you extrapolate that, extend that to all beings, all beings will rise and pass away, who are born and will die. They are also subject to the same thing.
Correct.
And by extrapolating that to all beings, then the path could arise. And once the path has arisen, and then you develop that path, eventually you will be all the asavas, all the cankers will be destroyed. You can become an arahant.
Bhante, why is it that the path only opens only when you think about others as subject to this?
Because it's more general, and you see that the general nature of anicca, it extends, is a universal characteristic of all things. So
this comes basically under mindfulness of Dharma.
Yeah, you could say so. Yeah. It's talking about basically all anicca, isn't it?
Right.
All impermanent.
Correct.
So you see impermanent, then you see suffering, and then you see non-self. It's all not under your control. Things happen. So you see these 3 characteristics. And also because you reflect on it frequently, again and again, it gives you a sense of urgency.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why it's so potent. It can also lead to the path arising.
Wow. That's awesome. And then there's something else you said earlier I want to point out and also ask for your opinion. which is that in order to start to have a virtue to contemplate on, you need to have virtue to begin with.
Yeah.
Right, and then it reminds me of the paramitas, the perfections, which was created later, composed after the Buddha. But the first two paramitas are always generosity and Sīla, which is virtue. And now I can see how it works, because it's from these two paramitas. I mean, generosity is about relinquishing, right? You start relinquishing, and it also creates a good, healthy virtue in yourself. That's why it leads to virtue. And then from there, then you can go into the 5 faculties, and then the 6 contemplation, and so on. And that begins a path to enlightenment. Awesome. Bhante, I have a last question for you. If our audience only remembers one thing, if you want to remember only one thing, what would be the one thing?
The one thing is look at suffering and its cause.
Look at suffering and its causes.
And see the link between suffering and its cause in your daily life. Whenever you feel unhappy, upset, disappointed, frustrated, depressed, look at that. But just looking at that, sometimes you get drowned in it because you start to think.
Correct.
So you look at it, and then you must anchor yourself back to the 5 senses, which are always in the present. That will help to ground you.
5 senses in the present. Okay, that is beautiful. Thank you, Bhante. That's such powerful, wonderful teachings. I learned so much from you today.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, dear Bhante.
My pleasure.
Thank you.